Hi everyone, nice to have you here. We're going to start in just a few minutes and let everybody join beforehand. So nice to have you with us, and just pulling up the slides now for our introduction. Okay, welcome everybody. We are about 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and we're 3 o'clock UK time. And we want to welcome you to PAS 320, a user's guide. We're delighted to have you with us this afternoon. We have a panel of 3 experts within the industry who are here sharing their time and their insights with you on PAS 320, the guidance for developing and maturing a food safety culture within your business. So if we move on to the first slide, and we will make a start. So just some housekeeping really. We are going to start the discussion very soon. We'd love your interaction. We'd love your questions and comments. So please feel free to use the comment button on the right hand side, and also the question button. You can see a little speech bubble there with a question mark. So please drop in the chat and say hi to everybody. And please give us your questions and comments as we go through the discussion. If something occurs to you, you'd like to share a little comment or ask a question of any of the attendees, please do so. We're really welcoming those comments and questions. And if we move on to cover what we're going to talk about in today's webinar. So PAS 320 was launched over a year ago, and it was the culmination of a lot of work from the industry. And we'd like to thank those people who actually took so much time to actually put together, develop, discuss and review what was really the first standard or publicly available specification on food safety culture. And since then, we've had lots of stories from people across the industry, and we've certainly talked to people about their experiences and real life examples of using the PAS as a framework for developing food safety culture. And we're really looking forward to hearing the stories from our panelists today. We'd love to be covering best practice and also how to engage your teams on developing and maturing food safety culture. So we're going to just give brief introductions to everybody. My name is Alison Cousins. I'm a Global Consumer Retail and Food Training Director at BSI. I've been working in the food industry for my entire career, and for the last 10 years I've been involved in learning and development and writing training courses and training trainers. And food safety culture is one of the topics that I've been involved in writing and developing the courses for. And we have 3 panelists today, and I will hand over to them to introduce themselves. We have Jill Stuber, we have Damarys de Castillo, and we have McCrystal. And so I'm going to go to Jill and ask her to just introduce herself.
Well, thanks for having me, Alison, and the BSI team, and for everybody here. I'm Jill, and I work with Catalyst, and we're a company that provides solutions for leadership development and food safety culture. And I came into this space because for about 20 years, I worked directly in food safety and in manufacturing, and really leaned into how leadership helps us be more successful in our organizations. And so since then, I've become a professional certified coach so that I can really help others as you navigate through this journey.
Thanks, Jill. And Damarys, please introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me and to have the honor to share on this panel with these amazing colleagues. I'm Damarys del Castillo. I'm the Global Director of Food Safety Culture and Food Safety Systems at Sigma, a leading multinational food company. My main function is to provide support to our different locations in their food safety culture journey and help them with the innovation that facilitates regulatory compliance and food safety in general.
Thanks, Damarys. And it's lovely to have you, and lovely to have Jill, and lovely to have Chris. So I'm going to hand over to Chris now.
Thank you, Alison. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm Chris McCrystal, Global Head of Food Safety and Quality Assurance for Compass Group PLC. So we are a leader in food and support services across the world. Delighted to be among esteemed panelists as we get to talk about Past 320. So with around 30 years of international experience in food manufacturing and food service, and just over half of that with Compass, I'm currently responsible for overseeing our global food safety program in terms of resilience and excellence from farm to fork. And I was a member of the Past 320 steering group.
Thank you. And yeah, we really welcome all of you today. And we're going to start to dig into some of these questions that we've had, and certainly questions that we've experienced from across the industry. And one of the things that always strikes me as being maybe a surprise is that a lot of people within the industry actually haven't started on this journey to maturing food safety culture. So, Damarys, I'm going to come to you first. What do you think actually hinders companies from doing that?
To be sincere, I believe that one thing is living in the comfort zone. That feeling that nothing is going to happen because we're doing everything the same way forever. We do not need to invest in more training or education because we're doing great with the system we have in place. But the truth is that in reality, the food industry is continuously evolving, and there is always something. That's why we need to conduct reassessment every time we have a change, even for the smaller ones. Not being aware of this evolving environment or not taking it seriously, those small issues, not identifying them correctly, they can evolve into big issues in no time. So I think that getting lost in the operational mode is a thin line, and not allowing in space to recognize the priority to have a strong food safety culture, it is risky business.
Yeah. So really, they're just letting the small things slide and hoping that they're not going to, or even just, being oblivious really that they're going to turn into bigger issues. Chris, is that something you've experienced as well, or are there other things, there are other factors at play here?
Fundamentally, it's about leadership and committed leadership and safety leaders within that leadership. I am a safety leader for the business, but my main role is to guide our leaders to allow them to lead on safety and on
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah. So you think leadership is a big factor really that's stopping a company actually moving forward?
Potentially.
Okay. And Jill, you were talking about working part of your role. Is this plus other factors at play when you're working with companies and going to talk to them? What other things come into play here?
Uh, Alison, that's a great question because I think both Damarys and Chris kind of touched on it, that it's really this next level of leadership and really thinking about we may be doing things really good, but we can do things better. And we need to do things better if we want to continually evolve our business the way that we want to.
Yeah.
And so I think when people are just getting started, part of it that we don't know what we don't know. And so when we think about how do we need to lead differently to have a different outcome, we also have to lean into like we may need different skills to be able to step into that space. But that's why it's great that we have tools like Past 320 to help us give some guidance on like what does that look like and how do we start on that process.
Yeah, yeah, and that's something that certainly the was probably one of the issues that came up in the working group. That it's one of the challenges. Um, but I'm just wondering. I'm going to dig into that a little bit more as well with Chris, because you were part of the working group. Were there particular challenges there that people were flagging up?
In terms of the leadership piece Alison, or more
Yeah,
widely?
yeah. Was that something that came up? Because I know when you were working with the PAS and you were reviewing the PAS and it was coming backwards and forwards for comments, there was a lot of discussion in the room about different issues there. And I'm wondering if that was one key piece there.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are eight key pillars within the overall pass, and we very much started with the premise of including everything and forgetting nothing. So
Yeah,
it really is a blueprint, an end-to-end blueprint that allows those that are just starting the journey, but appreciating that many of us in large corporates are on the journey, or smaller businesses and individual business owners, they need to understand how it works for them in a small operation. So, it was a huge task and an administrative task in many ways, but a lot of dialogue and positive dialogue. And I think we were mindful not to leave any stone unturned, or any content out. So, more is better in this instance. But how we can translate this is important, because I don't think there is a one size fits all approach. And I think you have to translate the pass into what works for your business, in terms of language and approach, and to incorporate some real life examples and storytelling to land it with your colleagues and leadership.
yeah. So that brings me on to the second question, actually, quite nicely. And I'm going to stay with you, Chris, for this one. So, how do you approach this at Compass? What do you do, and how did you get it started?
So, luckily at Compass, we have an existing and a widely understood safety culture program. It's an internal program that operationalizes culture within three fundamental knowledge levers. The first one is around senior leadership commitment. The second one is very much around participation of employees and engaging with them on a consistent, sustained basis. And then finally, it's about knowing the right things to measure to accurately assess progress towards continuous improvement and cultural excellence. So that's the kind of dovetail with the past 320 and our approach within Compass. We enact our safety culture through our Seek Care Share program, which is an internal belief-based leadership program that focuses on leadership styles among personal health and well-being, and the impact you can have on teams as a leader.
So you've definitely got that system and structure in place then, by the sounds of it, which is great. So I'm going to move on to Sigma, because obviously you're a huge organization. You have companies globally very similar to Compass. How do you approach this, Damaris?
Sure, and I totally agree with what Chris mentioned. The way that I see it is like a never-ending learning,
Mm.
but in a good sense. Sigma, as you mentioned, is a very large organization with locations around the world. There is a lot of internal work already done. When I started in this position, in some locations more than others. So when I started kind of leading food safety culture specifically for the company, the first step for me was to educate myself, learn what we have, and get a clear understanding of our organization, different processes, reflecting about actual pain points and the needs in our manufacturing operations, different realities, and possible the language barriers due to the different cultural uh, connections that we have and locations. So it takes a lot of whys and how, what's the goal, and what I can improve that can have a positive impact in the business and promote those food safety mindsets in the organization. So after this analysis, using different tools, the initiative we already have in place, and of course the past guidance, I was able to align ideas and realities. So I can start developing an internal guidance since we are central. It's not that we're creating those food safety culture maybe plans for the facility. I don't want to use the word plans, but in reality, to align those ideas, it's just to create that guidance. And in reality, past 320 helped me a lot on that. They were, and the purpose of that guidance is to help them to evaluate their objectives and to be clear on what they want to achieve, right? And we need to have in mind and thinking about Sigma that some facilities may have more resources than others, right?
Yeah,
And we need to kind of connect with that reality. And that's why I always said that if Central can come and impose things, we need to facilitate and try to translate solutions for them so they don't see this like a big burden or another thing that I need to complete. They can
yeah,
connect whatever they have in place in their own facilities and connect those systems because for sure to have a strong food safety plan you need to have a good food safety management system in place.
yeah,
So in a perfect world everything doesn't happen quickly or smoothly. Transformation requires real intention and also to build a foster communication, right? Be patient, consistent, and build a net of collaboration among groups, departments, connecting the dots. And Jill always telling that, connecting the dots. Always having in mind that small steps take us to big changes.
yeah, yeah. And again, that goes back to what you were saying that the small things can turn into big things. So if you're making small good changes, that should be going on to making bigger changes. So yes, thank you. And Jill, you're working with companies all across United States and big and small. What's been your experience so far? What's how do you approach that? Because you're working with clients on this.
Yeah, we do. And, often the question we get is, gosh, do we need to wait for top leadership to get buy-in? Or we've been trying to get buy-in. And, really our message to them is, they're waiting for you because they hired you and they are confident that you are taking care of food safety. So if you need something to be different, then you need to step into this space differently to have different conversations and influence them for what it is that you need. So we really look at how individuals can really take ownership of I need to shift what I am doing so I have different outcomes. And then kind of like Damarys was saying, those small changes then start going out to other areas of the organization. And hopefully they all come to a spot where we can create, a higher level plan. And not everybody is starting at the same place. So like Chris had said earlier, there is no one size fits all. But the important part is starting. And if we're still waiting for somebody else to give us permission or to give us resources, then I'm really going to challenge you to say how do you take the first step?
Yeah, exactly. And and sometimes the first step is the hardest step, isn't it? So
It is.
yeah. So I'm going to go to the poll now because we did have a question for the participants on leadership, and there's been lots of talk about leadership. So I'm just going to launch the poll now. And again, please feel free to answer this. We're certainly not tracing back your answers. Um, and this is all confidential, and it's not trackable to anybody in the spirit of openness. It would be great to know how the participants feel about their leadership team, and how engaged they are on food safety culture. So I'll leave that open just for a minute, and it'd be interesting to get your comments on this. So, have we got pretty much only a third of people voted at the moment, so everybody's hedging their bets, or they're maybe not sure. That's another option we haven't got there. We're not sure, so we don't know. So feel free to plug in your answers. It's very much a blind poll here. We don't know who's voted what. So we've got nearly 50% of people voted. Little worryingly, I guess we've got maybe 25% at the moment. Can you all see the results of this poll as it's coming up? Because I can see how things are changing as different
We
people are
can.
voting. So
Yes, I like the live voting, so we can see one go forges ahead while the other one then
yeah,
catches up a little.
lots of activity here. That's brilliant. So about nearly two-thirds of you have voted, which is great. So we're hedging our bets here. I think we've got a lot of slightly engaged. So Jill, any comments on that when you see those results?
It doesn't surprise me because once again, I think when we think about our leadership team, they've entrusted us to help drive food safety forward. And
Yeah.
so they may be slightly engaged because they too are juggling many balls and they rely on you and are confident in you to help move that forward. I think the bigger question is, do you want them to be engaged differently? And what would
Uh,
that be? What would that
okay.
look like?
Yes. Yeah. And that's a good question. Yeah. What do you want from leadership team? Chris, does that surprise you? Do these poll results surprise you?
They don't surprise me at all. I mean, I think focusing on facilitating leaders to lead on safety, as I said earlier, is key. To be the unsung hero in the movie and to let the leader be the starring role is how you're going to land it. It's about linking in safety to the corporate goals, and so that it's communicated and clearly understood.
Mm, very much so. Damarys, would you agree with that?
I totally agree. I think that it takes a lot of education as well, from our side. We can pretend that people that maybe have a different mindset than ours in terms of food safety, right? They're going to be thinking that, okay, I'm going to be 100% engaged in it because they think that, okay, my duty here is different. I don't need to really be engaged. But in reality, everybody's engaged when
Yeah.
it turns to food safety.
Yeah. And to that point, actually, we've had a lot of feedback, and certainly when we surveyed some of the people who'd downloaded the PAS and used the PAS, which, by the way, is 4,000 downloads so far, which is great news. So that's a really positive number. It's one of our top 3 PAS documents for the whole of 2023, and that's not just food; that's all of the sectors that we work in. So that's fantastic. So all of your hard work on the teams and the writers and developers is fantastic. But we're still seeing that this is given to the food safety team, and that came back very much from our poll results. It comes back from client feedback as well. So it's almost sort of it's food safety culture. So let's give it to the food safety team. So what do we do with that? Well, how would we advise that food safety team? What can you do if your leadership team is telling you this? Jill, I'm just going to come to you first of all. You've got the food safety quality managers coming to you. What would you advise them? How can they take it forward?
Well, I think there's, different aspects to look at. I think first people need to think about that leading food safety culture is not for everybody. And if you're not passionate about culture, but you love food safety, then stay in the technical lane and be really good at what you do.
Mm,
But if you're charged with leading food safety culture, then, really challenge yourself to step into, I'm going to call it the big league when it comes to leadership skills. You keep hearing that over and over with us. The push, I think, when it comes to food safety culture is really challenging how food safety leaders are defined. There's a big difference between being a technical expert and leading a team and being a technical leader who's leading food safety culture. And I think that's coming more and more into the limelight as we have more awareness through, different conferences are focusing on food safety culture and leadership. PASS 320 is talking about it. But really, when the team gets that, we have to think about what are the skills and competencies that we need to adopt, evolve, and mature with to help move food safety culture forward.
thank you. And Chris, for you, I mean, obviously you're very well organised and structured at Compass, but for a company that's perhaps not at that stage and it's still being pushed back to that food safety team, what can they do?
They have to try harder. They have to, I guess, tell the story authentically to the leadership to
Yeah.
get them to take it on. I completely agree what Jill says. We have great technical practitioners and we've got great leaders that can lead on safety culture. And it's being there and coordinating it, the overall approach as a technical leader. But the right leaders, they step into that role and lead it effortlessly. And for us personally at Compass, we have a lot of safety culture leaders within the leadership team that have come from allied industries, not just the food industry, but allied industry, where, for example, aeronautics, where safety culture is part and parcel of everything they do and everything they focus on. So it's having the right people. And if you haven't, it's trying to get to that point where you have the right people with the right credentials and capabilities. So there's plenty to do, but I do feel for those people that are technical teams that are trying to further it, but being held completely accountable for it. You've got to share that accountability.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Damarys, coming to you because you're dealing with different cultures within your organization, aren't you? Am I right in saying that? Because you've got so many different sites with different cultures. So, if it's given to you as the food safety person and the food safety team, how have you gone about engaging leadership and what did you do and take it away from, not away from the food safety team, but you are wanting to engage more teams across the business?
Sure. And Chris and Jill were saying it. In reality, it's very important to have the right leaders and employees in the right positions. To make a transformation, you need agents of change.
Yeah.
This is not going to happen just because you have someone there and you're educating that person. That person needs to really live it, embrace it, and with them you can continue renovating, paving, and fertilizing the ground. There is no other way to achieve something alone, right? Um, and also, I would like to mention that if you want to influence others, you need to really understand your business and the people. It's very important to make a good risk-based analysis. And as I mentioned it before, to have the strong food safety management system in place, a communication strategy, and also kind of have clear and achievable goals. Not a lot at the same time, because if not, it's going to be overwhelmed and people
Mm.
then see things too far away, and we don't want that, right? We want things that they can achieve, that they can set goals and they can work with that. And I think that if you can help motivating, you can trigger another goal, working on something and see the results. And then you see, oh, wow, I achieved this. Okay, let's move on. And then start closing circles, not just open a lot of circles and not closing no one of them. So I said, like they said in the industry, walk the walk. It is very true. It helps you visualize what is happening around you, and have to connect and inspire. You
Yeah.
have been mentioned this, it's repetitive, but for sure, all plants are not created equal. And it is a reality, but the benefit or the consequences of not having a strong food safety culture are the same.
Mm. That's very true. And you've both mentioned storytelling, you and Chris as well, across your organisations, and that's such a strong. Jill's nodding as well. The storytelling element very much comes through that past, doesn't it? It came through as one of the elements there. If you've got any examples to share on storytelling, that where you think, we used this and we did this and we gave this example, and also any of the delegates, if you've got any examples. I'm looking at some of the questions here as well, so we're going to come to those in just a minute. But storytelling is definitely, from a learning point of view, really helps, knowledge to stick and to be relevant to different people. So that's such a strong piece. I'm going to come on to, because we've been talking about people a lot. Now we've got HR teams within the business here, and this is quite an interesting one because a lot of people that we surveyed had said um, that different teams were using the PAS. Food safety team came out as the top team that used the PAS, but very low levels of respondents came out with the fact that actually the HR team had been given or were using the PAS. I'm just wondering how we can have better conversations with HR on that. And Damaris, I'm going to come to you on that one. What, first of all,
Sure, sure. And let me tell you, in my case, involve, evolving HR has been a blessing, to be sincere,
yeah.
because it was it was achieved through education and a little bit of marketing with them, to be
Okay,
sincere.
okay.
But the reality is that HR is the bridge. You know, they are the bridge that helps you connect with other departments. HR needs to be your ally, but you need to help them understand what food safety means, because they deliver the information, but in reality, they are just sharing what we gave them. But we
Yeah,
need them to understand the importance, right? And also to understand the employees' requirements with food safety, depending on their position they are kind of, taking in the company. Uh, if we want to prevent issues, we need to start with the onboarding process. And that is a work that we do with HR. There's no
yeah,
other way. So uh, we need to communicate the organizational culture, because that is a huge part of connecting the food safety culture within the organization, and making sure we're providing the right tools to them. HR is the first connection with the people that are going to be working with you, and they're the ones that are going to be explaining those why and hows from the very first time. So that's why it's so important for them to understand what they are, sharing as an information. And so that it doesn't happen only once, happens several times as well, depending on the circumstances with the employee. So something that is important and is also mentioned in the past 320 is accountability. Who's going to help you handle situations where something is happening or is deviated of the expectations, right? It's HR. HR are the ones that should be, helping you on how you're going to be handling those situations, making sure that we are keeping a safe environment to facilitate communication, and for sure fostering a good food safety culture.
okay, lovely, thank you. Jill, I'm going to come on to you with the same question. How do we have better conversations with HR?
Well, it's making the ask. They won't magically read our minds and say, gosh, we should be involved in food safety culture. And we just had a sparking food safety culture workshop with one of our clients last week where the VP of HR wanted to be involved. So they wanted to be involved because they recognize that there is this shared purpose. And part of that is because the food safety team also really talked about this shared purpose of, if we want better food safety outcomes, that's about people. So often we focus on data and science when really we are talking about people. All of this is people. And
Yeah,
so, like Damarys said, when we can start having these conversations to link with HR and talk about how do we find the right people? How do we onboard them better? How do we develop them better and empower them? Culture is about empowering people to be involved. And so HR too wants to step into this space with us. And so really it's about asking them. And then setting up, Chris has talked about KPIs. Like, what are actual meaningful KPIs? Not high level, not the world we're solving world hunger, but that's making sure each person gets a meal in this region. What does that look like? We have to do the same thing when it comes to food safety culture. If we're just doing a survey result to tell us how we're shifting, we're likely going to miss the mark. And so, working with
mm,
HR, we can get some more meaningful KPIs that directly tell us, are the actions we're taking on a weekly, daily, monthly basis contributing positively to food safety culture and the culture of the organization.
Lovely, thank you. And Chris, the same to you with again a multi-site business, thousands of sites.
Absolutely. And, I think linking food safety culture to organizational culture is extremely powerful. And that's something that Compass has done very successfully. My advice, set up a culture club, define culture in terms of key behaviors, safety, of course, but diversity and inclusion, ethics and compliance, and sustainability. I think package it, and as Damarys said, package it for recruitment. That's that common interview question. How would you describe the culture of your organization? There's our opportunity to bring all of that in and really describe the fundamentals of the business. Now, Compass is actually a family of individual businesses. We have a decentralized model, a very client and sector led approach. So being mindful of that and not wanting to affect what are already good, strong cultures in various countries, locations, and sectors, we just overlay it with a very simple and easily defined compass culture. And our culture is around winning and it's around caring, but fundamentally it's about zero complacency. We can trace our culture over 80 years ago when we first started in the Second World War as a business. And even back then, the culture was about no complacency. So I think that's key as well. And it's fundamental to our beliefs and values.
Yeah. Yeah, we can all trust when we eat Compass food that it's being cared for by people who care. And it's interesting, you were talking about defining culture. We're getting lots of questions in on measurement culture here. So I'm going to go and just have a look at this because Martin has asked, how do you create performance indicators for food safety culture? That is direct or non-direct, such as reduced failure cost or fewer complaints or less recalls. Would anybody like to comment on that one? So
Yeah,
create,
I
yes, go.
think I think absolutely there are many indicators, leading ones ideally, but lagging ones will also feed into that. So anything from hours trained on adapted training to do with culture, results from self-assessments, from independent assessments, from audits, from number of incidents and recalls, as was mentioned. I think they're all very, very important indicators that you've got a robust, fit for purpose food safety management system and an excelling culture.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
the management system is working. Sorry, Jill, go.
Oh, I was just going to add to that. We work with some clients who even have some more granular ones. We keep talking a lot about leadership and the importance of strong leaders to help take care of people because that's what culture's about. And so really we really help people focus on how do you prepare leaders before you need leaders. And so we have many clients that are measuring things like the percent of people that have gone through a leadership development program or the dollars invested in leadership development so that we can really make this a priority for the organization going forward so that we can have more of those lagging results like less rework, less recalls, less customer complaints because we are taking care of people
Yeah, yeah,
who then take care of business, of course.
yes,
yeah.
exactly.
And I agree with Chris and Jill comments. The only word of advice, make sure how you are collecting that data. Make sure that you are collecting the data in the right way, and that the way that you are analyzing that, who are you involving on analyzing that data, because
Mm,
it's not just collecting data for the sake of collecting data, and then how you're
yeah,
gonna be, analyzing that and the information that you're really receiving from it. Sometimes maybe it's something that you don't want to see, so you need to work with that, right? And,
yeah,
and, and, and that is the reason of having the indicators, but also make sure the way that you are collecting that data.
yeah. Apologies for any background noise here. We've got helicopters going over. But I'm also going to pick up on two other questions. So we've got a question related to measurement for smaller businesses who perhaps don't have so many resources and don't have so many people working in that team. So, and also we've got across multi-sites as well. I'm going to pick up on the smaller businesses first because we've talked a lot about larger businesses. But if you've got fewer resources, you know, Damarys, is there any advice you would give to companies there, you know, to make the most of what they've got, I guess, but how would they do that?
Sure, and sometimes the small companies feel that this is a big kind of burden. In reality, I think that is easier to deal with the food safety culture because you don't have that many people. You have a small group. You can talk to them, so you don't have this problem maybe with the silos thing. Everybody
Yeah,
have to talk there. Maybe you have a group of five, 10. I have been seeing companies that, large. Sometimes when I was in Puerto Rico, you have the people, the whole family, the father, the mother, and then the rest of the family just working in the company.
yeah,
And uh, despite the size, you still need to comply with regulations. You still need to comply with documentation. You still need to collect information. So maybe large companies easier to have a lot of systems in place because of the volume of data that we're collecting or the volume of products that we're moving. But then those small ones, they're still collecting that information, maybe on a different way, more traditional way. Uh, but you have information there that you can use,
yeah,
that you
yeah,
can measure, that can use to transform and set bars internally to continue fostering that growing internal food safety culture. For me, the basics is communication. If you have a good communication internally and transmit that information to the people that are with you, to
yeah,
make sure that you are following that, the importance that that have. It's a thin line, as I said before, between operations and then making decision toward food safety. So you can then work with those companies. Those companies can work internally on making the right decision,
yeah.
putting food safety first.
Completely. And yeah, so true about communication, which can be, you know, very challenging across a big company, and perhaps less so when when you're all working in the same site. Jill, anything from you on working with smaller companies, fewer resources? Is that a challenge, or as Damaris says, perhaps it's more simple, or not simple, but
Yeah,
simpler in terms of fewer people.
it can be. I think regardless, everybody has challenges. It's just bigger companies sometimes have bigger challenges, or we think they have more resources, but right, we've all probably worked for really big companies, and there always seems to be not enough resources to go around. So
Yeah,
I think there's really things that big and small companies have in common when it comes to that. The one thing I would like to touch on is when we talk about communication, um, you know, for people to think about, often we'll say, gosh, we have open door policies and we really welcome feedback. And really to think about, does that always translate to we have safe spaces for people to actually use their voices?
yeah,
Because even though we may kind of passively say we have open doors, if we're not intentionally making spaces where people feel belonging and community to use their voice, we'll never get to the bottom of what we're trying to do. So whether that's making meaningful KPIs or, getting resources to help us move food safety forward, that's really one of the key elements that we need our leadership teams to help us cultivate.
mm. Yeah. That's so true. Actually, saying it and doing it are two different things, aren't they? And actually walking the floor and finding out what's going on is sometimes quite revealing. Chris, well, you're nodding there, and you've got the
I,
multi-sites and you've got the small. Do they sort of operate as small businesses in themselves? Would you say then, or because you've got that group-wide network?
They do to a degree, but I just wanted to pick up there on what Jill was saying, which is absolutely right. One of our key leading indicators is a leadership safety walk. That's
Yeah.
something that's relevant for our business, but it's also extremely relevant for small businesses. To have those what we call seeker share interactions, and it's the interaction that you've got visible leadership showing an interesting, asking questions around what would make your role easier? What are your challenges? What were you last trained on in safety? And engaging them and highlighting the positives and sure, picking up some observations for improvement. But it's really about engaging and then capturing it, reporting it, and following up so that any promises that are made at a site level are followed through. But that's a KPI for us. We find them fundamentally useful. And we try and get our leadership, both within country and at group level, involved in those visits. And again, smaller businesses can do just that with owner operators. Have the conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's really great advice. And that is part of the PAS, I think, isn't it? It's referred to as Gemba walks, I think, in the PAS, and that was brought in very much by the experts in the team there. So really, really good advice. I'm going to jump to a question here, which is interesting, where we've got from Amit. How do we mature food safety culture in organisations where automation is the norm and people hands-on involvement is less? What type of culture is recommended here as per PAS 320? So give you a second to think about that one because that's an interesting one where we've got less people and more machines, I guess. We've still got a culture though, haven't we? We've still got people operating those machines. Chris, would you like to pick up on that one?
Thank you for that. Um, well, yeah, as you said, culture is extremely important, regardless, if it's one or 100 or 1,000 associates or employees. You've got to set the culture, and leadership have to set the tone of, expectation. Um, and yes, there may be, people outnumbered by machines and robots, and that is certainly going to be, increasingly the case going forward. But fundamentally, the bricks and mortar are the same.
Yeah,
Culture wins.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And I'll add to that as well. Sometimes I think we believe that more AI and automation is going to help us with better connections and better communication and better, transparency as we push information out. And I would, even challenge us to really think about at the more we have automation and robots, that we need to lean into leadership even more and taking care of people because it is easy to miss these personal connections that Christy talked about, right? Going out and having conversations is still really essential. And without that, the culture will be, well, whatever it happens to be. So we have to intentionally set the tone and be active in that space. Otherwise, we will default to what's easy. And easy isn't always the right path when it comes to taking care of people.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, so
And
true.
I see technology also as kind of embedding safety and safety culture more and more through digital HACCP, embedding HACCP in paperless systems, for example. I think that all serves to embed safety culture through technology, and there is more technology that can help with that.
Mhm.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
much.
And I can add to that that in reality, the human piece is always going to be there. And I was thinking about a visit that I made to one of our facilities that we only have two people in food safety. Everything is so automated that I was so amazed. Still, you need that human piece to connect the departments to have discussions to make decisions, right? Maybe those automatization is helping you to have a smoothly operation, right? And you have something there that is not getting tired, like maybe the human part. But still, you need that human piece to make decisions and to oversee the operations. And it's very important because there is no other way to connect. You know what is happening outside that machine that is maybe just doing something repetitive, but someone outside has to make decisions over what is happening there and communicating that in case we need to take an action or anything else that emerged during the operation.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. So, and actually, that I'm gonna just move on to a question that we were talking about as we were talking about this webinar, which is the concept of food safety culture fitting in within organizational culture and certainly safety culture. So there's been lots of discussions about, safe, well looked after people produce safe food. And are there any comments that you'd like to make on that? Because it is something that we're certainly sort of having more discussions on. Jill, have you got any insights on that one?
Well, I think, Chris, you've talked a lot about how food safety culture really is embedded into organizational culture. And I think we probably can all agree that it really does represent this bigger organizational culture that we have. But with that said, food safety is kind of a microcosm within there, and we still need someone to kind of champion, like, don't forget about food safety as we are adopting technology and automation, and as we're bringing people on board, and as we're thinking about different, you know, tools or support that we need for people to take care of them better, so that they can take care of these areas. So, really, I think that's part of, why we've all talked here about it really is about getting others involved and creating safe spaces, because all of those things link together.
Definitely, definitely. Damarys, would you like to comment on that as well? People safety and food safety.
Yeah, I think that both are top priorities, as Jill was mentioning. And as I said before, it has to happen from the very beginning, right? You can take someone inside your operations without training that person in food safety and also about safety. It's come together. It's a combo. Let's say it that way. It comes together, and I believe that we were careless to bring an employee into an area without letting them know and showing them what safety hazards may be present, the protective equipment that they need, and how to react in case of an emergency, because his actions can hurt himself and others. So it's the same way for food safety. It can You can bring someone inside in the operations or in the company without understanding what food safety hazards are present, what actions he needs to follow, and the important and impact his job has that may cause the product to be unsafe. So I think that we should lead by example. That's another piece of that, right? Because it's not just that people that we need to train, it's everybody that is involved and go inside and outside that operation. And and at the end, anything that happens with food safety or safety has a direct impact in people, can hurt them, or if it's not done correctly, can cost them.
Mhm.
Lovely. So we are almost at the time. We've got the last 5 minutes or so to cover a question, and I'm going to pick up on Gary's, which was directed at you. Actually, it's quite an interesting one. Um, are you ever surprised at the maturity level when you go to measure organisations? And I guess that's an interesting one. We haven't really covered the different measurement tools and the different ways of measuring culture. That there's lots of commercial tools on the market, but I'm also going to sort of dig into that a bit more and just say, well, what are the say what are the best ways, but what are the ways that have caused you most insights, I guess, of what are the things that surprised you when perhaps you went in to work with clients? And I'll come to the other two about in their organisations. Was there anything that really surprised you when you went to measure something and it didn't come out as you expected, I guess? So, Jill.
Well, we don't actually do the measurement part, but we have been brought in by clients who have said, "Gosh, we did some surveys, and the results really surprised us."
Yeah.
Where the food safety team was like, "Gosh, we felt like we were messaging and communicating really well and getting people involved." So they were really surprised when they had a really broad range of responses to how people felt about culture and their role in it. And really the part that we talked about was like, how are you going past survey results? Because once again, that's collecting data, which is a natural part of what we do as food safety technical experts, but we have to bring the people side in. So how are we getting out and having, Chris, like you talked about, it's conversations. That's probably the takeaway that you'll hear from me is how do we lean into new conversations to get different information and engage people differently.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my takeaway when it comes to surveys with, how do we balance that with the human element, not just the data portion?
Yeah, yeah, and that's good. I mean, obviously, you've got companies there who were surprised by results, but luckily brought you in to start to deal with that and to start to address those
Mhm.
issues. So, Chris, has anything been a surprise when you've been measuring culture across the business?
We measure our culture primarily using those conversations, those interactions, and those interactions are around both personal safety and food safety by design, by
Yeah,
completely by design within our industry subsector. You know, it's aligned to our strategy, our messaging, our values, and so on. And I think yes, because they're so aligned, you will have sites that will have opportunities for improvement in both areas, so that they're just in parallel and so well aligned that you can predict in a way that with one comes the other, which is,
yeah,
I guess, confirms the overall hypothesis that we should treat them both together.
Mhm.
So, so that's what we do. In terms of measuring, we measure performance and safety performance towards a better culture. I think our plans around measuring safety culture through a survey at the moment they are embedded within our overall safety survey that we issue every year globally. But I think going forward, we'd like to maybe hone in and expand the food safety and the safety element to give us a bit more visibility, but that's all wrapped up in an overall survey. And we've got to be mindful not to survey our people too much. We don't want to
there
upset
is
them.
that as well. Yeah, over
Yeah,
surveying. Yeah, they do get tired. Damaris, I'm
yeah,
going to come to you for the last thoughts now.
sure. And I totally agree. And I think that that part is very important. What is the maturity level that I would like to achieve?
Yeah,
And thinking about that, we just started doing like a global survey last year, uh, and going to very possibly, I would not like to say generic, but very question that maybe embrace the whole different departments to get a sense, because we don't have that baseline established. So we need to start working on that. Even that some groups have been working on doing their internal surveys, but we would like to have something that we can, measure as a whole to establish actions. As Chris says, we need to find, okay, what are the opportunities we have here that we can start working and that we can engage other departments on helping us. Communications. And then are we doing enough trainings? Are the trainings are target correctly? Are we investing in our leadership? The supervisors are not really understanding how management is connecting with all this, how the organizational culture is connecting
yeah,
with the food safety culture, and how these people are seeing this. Because we
yeah,
don't want them to see it differently. We want them to see it as a whole, because
yeah,
we are, one single company. So we want to work in that direction.
yeah.
It's not an easy task. It sounds very nice and
No,
saying it, but I feel that is something that it is important to visualize, and I believe it is the way that help us to see those maturity levels that past has, and see, oh wow, we are here. I, I would like to continue growing on this,
we need to
and
grow.
getting to this next step, what I need to do. And people get motivated because they are really seeing something that can use to continue working toward that goal.
Thank you. And this is a topic I would quite happily talk to you all about for the rest of the day, because I think there are so many insights. Sadly, we have come to the end of the time together. I just want to thank all of you for your input to the webinar, for your insights and your best advice. And I'm sorry that we haven't been able to cover all of the questions, but I'm sure if you do drop your email in the chat, if you haven't had your question answered, please do that, and one of us will be able to get back to you. Thank you, Chris and Jill and Damarys, for your time. Thank you also, as Damarys reminded me just beforehand, to those of you who, if you are attending and you were involved in the past development, thank you so much for your advice as well and guidance. Thank you for being with us today. We've really enjoyed having the conversation, and we look forward to welcoming you back for another webinar, hopefully at some point in the future. So thank you all.
Thank you.